Hey guys, it's Michael here with Reconciled, and it's Friday, April 24th. I have Dan Luthi with Ignite Spot, Chris Maxey with Prefix Accounting, Jacob Schrader with Ascend Consulting here with me, and we're here to do our COVID-19 update, formerly known as Daily COVID-19 Update, but we ran out of things to talk about. So now we're going to only talk when we think it's important, which is probably the most important thing to do. Today, we are going to be giving you an update on how to prepare for Monday's comeback of the PPP loan now that it's been funded with additional funding to the tune of $320 billion. Is that the right number? $320 billion of additional funding. And what you need to do to prepare for that. Also, we had a bunch of customers get their disaster grants, their EIDL grants this past week. And what that means, especially if you were not expecting to get it, what that means for your PPP loan forgiveness, if you also got a PPP loan. And the fact that also these disaster EIDL loans and grants we're given more funding by this money that was funded or passed by the House and will be signed by, or has been signed by the president. Is that right?
He was signing it today.
Signing today.
He had to wait for TVs. He had to wait
about 3 hours ago, wasn't it? That he signed it?
Yeah, signed it.
So, yep.
And then the last thing is documenting uncertainty, documenting how the COVID-19 has impacted your business over the past few months. So, Jacob, why don't you kick us off with one of those topics you recommended? Great.
So we'll start from the top where you started of SBA opens back up Monday. So make sure you have things ready. Make sure things are into your bank, know your calculation, know that you're in line if you're still waiting, right? So if you have not been notified that your application was approved in the first round, make sure it is queued up this time, right? Reach out to your banker. It's 5:07, it might be a little late on the East Coast, but bankers work Saturday mornings, right? So make sure you're in line. Especially if you're at a big bank, consider, should I be switching to a fintech? Do I want to get in line somewhere else to make sure I truly am in line instead of just hanging out there in some line, maybe not even the SBA's line, just in some other line. And I bring that up because even just like yesterday, I had a client that was pending approval at Chase, and Chase sent back and said, hey, we couldn't confirm your number. You just got booted out of our line, right? So the fact is they're just getting through those applications, and that person thought they were in line and thought they had a strong position, and they just got booted out. So reaching out to your bank and confirming that you are in line if you're still waiting for funding would be a big thing for me.
Well, I'd say on top of that too, I mean, if you even gone through a fintech, this is something that happened to us as a firm, which was kind of surprising. But we're going through a fintech as well, and they didn't communicate very well with the bank, and the way that it got back to us, come to find out, they'd thrown our application out days before. And so, but no one knew because of the way that their communication was. And so even from that standpoint, if you're hoping and praying that someone's got things taken care of, today's a good day, definitely, and even tomorrow, to call and make sure that you're in the line that you're supposed to be. If you're using a fintech, make sure you reach out to them, make sure you potentially reach out to the bank that they're connecting with, to be able to make sure you're covered so that you're not high and dry come Monday when the floodgates open and there's 10,000 salmon trying to swim through an eye of a needle to get this money. So
yeah, take this weekend to harass the ever-living shit out of your banker until they tell you what your status is. Is what we're saying.
Yeah, agreed completely.
Sorry in advance, bankers.
Well, but it's funny though, because there's been a handful of even, I mean, local banks were the big winners, I think, and credit unions, things like that were the big winners this last time. I mean, people were able to create great partnerships and things from that standpoint, but there's been a handful of people that I've known who are actually getting emails as of now saying they're cutting people off from the last round. So they're finally getting through all of it, and they're only going to submit a certain amount through this next round to be able
Wow.
to be able to make sure they're covered. And so if you haven't received a no, you better still check to make sure that you're covered, just in case you need to reapply, because there's always an opportunity to get money from somewhere else, especially if you need it.
Yeah, and I just got to know. Somebody said that Fundera tossed applications. Wow, that's amazing. So there's a lot of people who got late applications in, think they're in queue for this PPP resurgence, and are going to be surprised that they're not in line anymore. So definitely reach out and try other lenders if you were not successful with your bank or your bank was not able to help you.
And I'm going to say where you are in line matters, because 300 and however many billion by the time we take out the bank fees, right? So what exactly does it end up being, right? Because the bank fees are going to come out of there, is not enough to cover the apps that are probably already submitted. So the bank you choose and where you are in line is going to impact whether you get this or not, just to be very clear and blunt here.
All right. So the second topic we want to talk about was if you woke up this one of the mornings this week and you found $1,000 to $10,000 deposited into your business bank account by surprise from the SBA, then you most likely got, and if you had applied for a disaster grant or requested it, you most likely got a grant based on your employee count. So let's say you did the PPP loan, you got approved, you got funded, you did not expect to see that deposit because, hey, the money ran out and no one contacted you from the SBA saying you would get it. What do you do now and why does it matter? And so, Dan, do you want to take this topic real quick? I think
the part that's so important about this is that to be abundantly clear, you're only eligible for one forgivable loan, right? Or grant, as it will end up turning into through that process. The $1,000 to $10,000 that have been given out as the EIDL is beginning kind of initial offer to people is a grant. The PPP is potentially a grant also. And so what they're doing automatically with the calculation is they're saying that the EIDL portion they're giving to you is automatically going to be waived as a grant if you've received the PPP, because expecting the PPP is going to be a larger amount than that $1,000 to $10,000 that you're receiving. And so why wouldn't you take the larger money percentage from that standpoint, vice versa? So what ends up happening is that money that you received, the $1,000 to $10,000, now becomes a part of the loan that you will potentially have at the end of that period of time. So if you end up receiving $100,000 through your PPP, and all of that's forgiven, but you also received a $10,000, EIDL grant, that you now have a $10,000 EIDL loan that is due on the same terms as that PPP plan that you had.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a reduction of that PPP forgiveness. So that's great. Great to hear. So Jacob, any thoughts, or Chris, anything else you wanted to add there?
The spreadsheet template does not calculate that on the theoretical forgiveness. We do not have a line in there for EIDL advance after the fact. And on those spreadsheets or most calculations, and a lot of people get a little confused here, when you submit your application, it says minus EIDL advance, right? Or net of EIDL advance. That was for EIDL loans and advances issued before April 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's after that, it does not impact the loan that you get given. Mm-hmm. And I had some clients freaking out like, oh, my application's wrong because now I have an advance. No, it's not. Your application's still okay, right? And you will get the full amount, but you will not be able to get the full amount forgiven because you already got given money through the EIDL advance program. So just be really aware of that side, that it will just reduce that. So I always give the simple examples. You got a $100,000 PPP loan, you got a $10,000 advance. The max you can get forgiven is $90,000 because you already got given $10,000. So your total forgiveness can only equal the amount of the PPP loan.
Yeah. Right. All right. And lastly was documenting uncertainty. So this came up because of the frequently asked questions update that the Treasury put out with the SBA. And the last and final question, I think, was question 16. Is that right? Was it? Is that? I forgot what number it was.
33, I think.
33, something like that. Yeah. 33. Okay, don't listen to me. The last question was specifically related to asking if.
Hold up, it's not the last question because they just added some more questions.
Okay, so it's like the second
hour.
They
just
it's
added
a question.
the last hour.
So it's a question related to if your company is owned by a larger company and that larger company has access to capital, should you have applied for the PPP loan? Would you qualify? And the answer was very interesting and has a lot of implications for other types of companies, because it really declared that this loan was not supposed to be given to anybody that was owned by a larger entity with access to capital. And that the intent of this loan was for businesses without any access to capital. Now, what that means is very vague, but we do know it means that if you are owned by a public company or you are a public company, that you will not be forgiven on this loan.
You got problems.
You got problems. Yeah. So what other, so the question I bring up is the SBA, the Treasury, possibly changing and answering another FAQ is if you are a private company and you had access to a line of credit or additional term loan or a mortgage or something where you could access capital, did you try to use that first and were unsuccessful? And if you didn't, you shouldn't have applied for this loan. I could see that potentially happening.
So I'm going to read the statement that's causing a lot of concern, right?
Yeah.
So the certification everybody made when they submitted their application was the current economic uncertainty makes this loan request necessary to support the ongoing operations of the applicant. So you certified that when you submitted a PPP application, right? You initialed beside that statement and you certified it. So the next line in this thing is borrowers must make this certification in good faith, taking into account their current business activity and their ability to access other sources of liquidity sufficient to support their ongoing operations in a manner that is not significantly detrimental to the business. So to Michael's point, if you had a line of credit, could you have survived and not been significantly detrimental to your business just using that capital? There's a lot of gray in this. What does current economic uncertainty mean?
Right.
Uncertainty is a non-defined term anywhere. What does not significantly detrimental mean? I think those are two terms here that are very vague and can be open to lots and lots of interpretation, which means there's risk in that, right? So what I sent an email to every one of my clients that applied for a PPP loan and said, go and document why you felt this current economic uncertainty is there. I don't know that this will ever come into play. As of now, it says lenders may rely upon a borrower certification of this. So who's checking on this? Who's asking for it? Is there any check of this unless it's grossly obvious, like a publicly traded company who can easily access capital markets? They can just issue new shares and sell them on the market and they have a share price. So much easier for them to access capital market where maybe not so much for a private company. But we have asked all of our clients to document this just to be that safeguard for them. I was curious what else you guys are doing or what your guys' recommendation to your clients are on this.
So if it's a nonprofit, this is one of the easiest ones to kind of cover yourself, is to have a board meeting and illustrate in the minutes how it's affecting you.
Good idea.
And it's in public record, and then problem solved. You've at least got it somewhere that you've been discussing why you need this PPP loan. Other businesses where you are closed, you also have a very easy an easy explanation for it. Unfortunately, you don't have much use for the PPP, but you have a good reason for it.
Right.
If you are a business that is opened, being able to compare your numbers against previous year and seeing it affect your numbers in a pretty substantial way, you're pretty covered for that. If your business has not seen any sort of economic impact at all yet, hopefully there is some a little bit like further down the road, but that's where it starts getting a little murky.
Yeah, and also I think everybody.
Dan,
You're muted, Dan. I think everybody can document how stay-at-home orders have impacted your operations, which then in turn creates uncertainty of whether or not you can deliver your product or service at the same level, and therefore uncertain if you can fulfill your customers' requirements. And I think everybody could probably document it, whether you've had a reduction in price, reduction in service contract, deferment of service contract, something like that, that would help you with that uncertainty story.
I think along with that too, and I think, Michael, you bring up a very good point, right? I mean, if you're averaging a certain amount of revenue over a consistent couple of months or seeing a dramatic increase over a period of time, and there was a drop, right? Easy to document that piece. From a sales standpoint, you need to even look at, did we go through a lull or a period of times where our lead counts were down and lower than what they were, because that definitely affects future proposals, right? Future revenue you're going through. And even from that standpoint, even if you received those leads and you saw a decrease in the amount of acceptance that you were seeing on a consistent basis, that again is something that you can document through that space. But to that point, you have to show, I'm assuming you're going to have to show previous to that order as well, to make sure that there's communication and good constant data regarding that piece. I think one of the biggest struggles that I'm seeing that I would say across the board with this too is, there's a handful of construction companies that we work with and that we've talked with that maybe aren't seeing reduction immediately at this moment, but they know that there's going to be reduction coming because there's those sales leads that they were consistently having, and then those bids and proposals that were coming out for future projects are at a standstill at this moment in time. So they're definitely going to have a lull for a period of time that they're going to have to deal with. That's something that really need to start thinking about as that small business owner of, how can I prove this position? Because that is where you're going to have that ability to be able to forgive. And if not, again, it's a loan again, which is what no one wants.
Yeah, I mean, as is currently written, if you're not a publicly traded company, I mean, I think that even Saul Goodman could get you out of this, but like, as is currently written, I mean, it's legally speaking, this seems like a very easy like hurdle to jump over, but we don't know if they're going to change that and expand upon what they mean with it, which we can only hope. But yeah, I mean, make sure if there's anything that you can do now to capture that for the future, just take out the extra insurance and take care of it.
Well, I think to that point too, I mean, to start, just putting down notes, right? I mean, just document 5 to 10 lines of what impacts you've had over the periods of time, at least where you're going to need to go back and look for research purposes, right? I mean, to all of these things, and I'm seeing from a lot of banks from this standpoint too, that it's subject to changes from the SBA on the forgiveness. I mean, some of the banks who have already released funds, who are already provided, who already have signed documentation, they're actually giving that confirmation that says subject to SBA changes regarding forgiveness or documentation there. And so at least having framework around what that forgiveness is going to look like, or what types of items you're seeing for economic impact or potential economic impact, is crucial. And so giving yourself something to think about and preparing for it is a huge part of that process to consider as well.
Well, great, guys. This has been a good update. Anything else before we wrap up?
That's it.
That's it. April's almost over. One more week. Hopefully, you guys are getting back to normal life here at some point. But hope everyone stays safe, and we will hopefully see you next week. Bye-bye.